And so what I really want to say is we're all going to have problems. We're all going to have adversity, but it's out of our mistakes and our failures that we learn the most. And I would just offer that back to you. I'm sure you have your own stories about that, but don't be afraid of a problem. Don't fear, don't fear, having an issue in your business where you have to go backwards to fix it. You know what the real thing to fear is? Pride. Pride's the thing to fear.
Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Brent Garrett in Building Scale, the owner of Serious Plumbing and Air Conditioning, founder of the Skilled Trades Coach, and author of 30 Days to a Better Business. He's a second-generation plumber who's chose to enter the trades against his father's advice and has spent his career building, scaling, buying, and leading service businesses. Along the way, Brent experienced both incredible success as well as significant setbacks, including rebuilding after nearly losing a business under the weight of debt and operational challenges. Those experiences shaped his approach to leadership, systems, sales, accountability, and building companies that can thrive for the long haul. Today, Brent helps skilled trade business owners build profitable companies without sacrificing their values, families, or health while continuing to operate successful business of their own. And with all that said, Brent, happy today's Tuesday, and welcome to the show.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me. Will, good to be with both you guys today. After our pre-call, I'm really excited about our time together now.
Good. Me too. The first time we spoke, I was ecstatic. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be great. This is gonna be one of those that I know going in that it's just gonna be a good time." So I was very, very, very excited. So I said all these nice things.
Great energy.
Yeah, thank you. I said all these nice things, but give us a little bit more of your background. You, against your father's will to get into the trades, you have this massive story of the lights going out. Tell us the tales.
Yeah. So let's just start how I started in the business. I started the plumbing business, learning the lessons of hard work through my father at the age of 12 on the end of a shovel. I don't suggest that for everybody, but it was a great start for me. And my father was a Korean War vet. He did have a scholarship at the University of Missouri. He came from very humble beginnings and was in the National Guard while he was a senior in high school. And so instead of going to college, he was a reservist. He got called up halfway through his senior year in high school and was on a boat to Korea after basic training. So I still have his annual. He and three of his buddies, the picture in the back, they honored them. They weren't able to be at graduation. But my father came back from the war and never went back to school. He went to work for a local hammer factory in Bushnell, Illinois. Man, you would have to throw a dart precisely in the right spot and you probably still wouldn't hit Bushnell. You'd wipe out the whole place. It's so small. But I grew up in the Midwest, and he on the weekends, to make ends meet, he ended up being an apprentice plumber on the weekends. And I always tell people you get in the business three different ways. You either are born into it, which I was, you marry into it, or you had a buddy who needed a strong back and a weak mind, and you never left the business after that. So, and so to your point, my father wanted to make sure that all four kids of his kids were college graduates. So that was the case. And so I'm a first generation graduate. I'm an accountant trapped in a plumbing and air conditioning service tech's body. And so you're right. My dad was not very happy to hear that after I got out of school, what I ultimately wanted to do was, I think the big picture was I want to own my own business. But I told him that I was going to start my own plumbing and air conditioning business right out of school. A little naive, certainly ambitious, and that conversation didn't go very well. So hopefully that got you to where I got out of school, and that's how I made it to that point.
Yeah. So you get out of school, you tell dad, hey, I want to go in the business. He's not happy still. So then what has to happen for you to eventually own a plumbing and air conditioning?
Yeah, well, let me introduce you to Mr. Garrett a little bit, okay?
Okay.
And I'm not Mr. Garrett. Mr. Garrett is my father. He was a drill sergeant,
Mm.
and so I saw him cry twice. One was when his my grandfather died, and when I told him that I was going to get in the business, he was not happy to hear that. And the drill sergeant came out pretty quickly after a couple tears, and yeah, I think something like over my dead body, that kind of thing. And drill sergeants take yelling, and screaming to a whole new art
It's an
for
art form for sure.
motivation. So he was pretty upset, guys, and he just couldn't understand why would I want to do that after I had gotten a college degree. And I just saw the business as a great business. I saw that as always being in need, and so that's what I wanted to do. He said, "You know what? I'm so disappointed." Oh man, doesn't that hurt when your parents say, "I'm so disappointed in you.
I'm not
I'm going to
mad. I'm
come back in a
disappointed.
couple weeks and we're going to talk about this again." Because after the first go around with my dad, it was never that he wouldn't win the conversation. It was just a pause in the attack. And he came back in 2 weeks and said, "Look, I don't know why you want to do this, but if you're going to do this, you got to promise me one thing." And that's when I saw the white flag come out. So I said, "Okay, well, tell me what that is." And he said, "First 2 years," he said, "you need to go to work for one of these three companies." I said, "Okay, what is it?" And he said, "New York Life, Northwestern Mutual, or Mutual of New York." I said, "You want me to go sell life insurance?" He said, "Yep." He said, "Straight commission. And if you can't do that and you can't do it successfully, don't start a business." I really think he thought I would fail at it, is what I really thought. But it was the best advice, guys, best business advice he ever gave me in my whole entire life.
So you're gonna have to explain a little bit more. So life insurance, selling life insurance, what does that have to do anything with plumbing or anything, in the trades?
Yeah, it's the same question I asked back to him. I said, "Yeah, but why?" He said, "I've always been a good plumber. I've run a good business. But as you know, I've always had like one or two or three trucks. It was a lifestyle business. Number one, you and I are not going to work together." And I knew that the case, but he said, "If you learn how to sell and teach others how to sell, you will never be in a compromising position in small business." He said, "I know you can do the work, but it's the one thing that I never really had, that I formally understood or what to do." And he did go do some research. I asked him years later, how in the heck did you ever come up with those three companies? He said, "Well, I talked to a couple friends and that kind of thing." And what he did look for is he asked some questions about what's the toughest thing to sell and who has the best training programs. And he was right. I chose New York Life. And let me tell you what, when you're 22 years old and you don't have anybody to call on and it's 5:30 in the morning, you don't need an alarm clock to wake you up. I mean, and let's face it, that's what owning a small business is like. What if I don't have customers? What if I can't make payroll? What am I going to do? you know? And so at a very young age, he got me in to feel and understand and realize what it's like to live off what you create. The value you create in the marketplace is what you're going to make. And it was, guys, it was the best fundamental base education and advice I could ever receive from anybody in owning a small business. Because sales covers a multitude of sins at any point in your business, for sure.
I mean, I definitely say it. Sales cures all ails.
Mhm. I love that. Yep. Yep.
So
Yep.
I totally agree with you.
Now, the accountant in me, Will, would say, as long as you're priced right for the appropriate gross margin, but that's a whole different question. We'll talk about that if you want to later.
So you start selling, you start, the company, but was it all easy? Was it just all selling?
Heck
Yeah,
no.
once you got to
No,
selling,
not-
it's over. It's
Yeah,
easy
not at all.
street, right, Brent?
Yeah. So, well, so I was rookie of the year at New York Life. They were wanting me to stay in. I've got a buddy that works at used to work at New York Life that I meet every Monday night, or Monday every week. And he and I talk a little bit about that business. I still loved it and I miss it. I mean, and going to the sales training, it just rolls off my tongue. Well, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan. You got two problems in your life. You're either going to live too short or die too early or live too long. And at the New York Life, we can fix both of those problems so that you can have peace of mind for the people you love and care about so that they can go on and live their life. I mean, I haven't sold life insurance in 45 years and it's there, right? And so, no, it's not easy, but nothing happens if we don't make a sale. So I was like a lot of contractors at 25, 26. I did go to work for somebody in Texas so I could get my licenses. I'm licensed in both trades. And I bought a used Astro van, and I had a 50-page business plan and about $5,000 and went to my banker that I'm still with this day. He was I think he was an officer in the bank. He is now chairman of the board for 3 banks and a holding company, but I started that from service call 1. And no, it wasn't easy, but I would tell you that's the most exciting phase, that solopreneur phase. You go out, you have a happy customer, they refer you to somebody else, your business is growing, you're putting some money in your pocket. You're actually depositing, and what you do gets rewarded by the value that you bring to the marketplace. I mean, it was amazing. It got a lot more complicated as we started to move and add employees and things grew and, we were scaling that business. I actually read a couple important books along the way. Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Michael Gerber's E-Myth. And I at that age, I went to see a guy named Dan Sullivan, who is in Toronto. That was 30 years ago, guys. And I joined his 3-year program and I learned so much there. And we ended up growing that business. And there was an equity roll up, and a company called Service Master bought my business. I had sold it in about 4 or 5 years for, a comma or two. And it was really a cool thing. And man, I tell you what, I had thought I had made it by then. But yes, it was tough. I mean, all kinds of problems, and there are certain phases as you go through in your business. But I joined Service Master, got some very needed polish, and learned a lot of lessons the real hard way in corporate life. But I needed that additional understanding about how to scale and grow businesses.
So you grew the business for a bit. You said something about phases. You want to go back to that? What do you mean by phases?
Yeah, there are some stages in business that are very easily defined. Some you mark in your industry by maybe truck count or a certain revenue level. And if it's electrical or plumbing, air conditioning, HVAC, or let's say it's painting, okay? The numbers might change, but the phases still remain somewhat the same when you hit that wall. And there's about 3 to 5 walls that you hit and clear over. And I talked about that solopreneur. You're the first tech. There's that next phase is the teaming phase. You start hiring a few more producers. Well, guess what? You hit this level of bureaucracy and you need somebody to do more than just close out your books every month. You actually need to keep up with it every day. So you start creating a back office for what you need to keep operations going. And that teaming phase is when you start adding people in the field and you start realizing, hey, wait a minute, this isn't just about fixing the leak or taking care of a customer. There's a lot to this. There's payroll, there's taxes, there are all kinds of things. And so that next phase is an interesting one. And I call it the messy middle. And whether you're a painter or electrician, plumber, HVAC, the numbers may be different, but here's where you see it start to happen. You start hitting the ceiling of complexity that you're so busy running the business that you can't grow the business because you're the rainmaker, you're the key salesperson. The other thing that's a key indicator of the messy middle is when you realize you're working twice as hard for half the money you were making during the teaming phase. And if anybody is listening out there, I'll tell you what it looks like. It looks like all you're doing is creating jobs for other people. You're not creating profit, which hopefully was your goal. That messy middle can swirl. It can be a drain, meaning you go down the drain. It also can be, you say, wait a minute, I'm going back to when I knew what was going on. I had a handle on this. I'm going to get rid of 2 trucks. I'm going to make the money I was making, and I'm just going to stay there. And guys, 80% of the businesses in my industry or in skilled trades, 80% stay there.
So they go back to going from a scaling business or trying to build a scaling business. They're going back to a lifestyle business where all decisions flow through them, and rather than going through sort of the efforts of delegation. And
And I want to make, let's stay there for a minute, because there's 2 things that are going to happen in the messy middle. If you stay in that whirlpool, right? And you've got the strength and you're staying out of going down, you're either going bankrupt, you feel you're getting really, really tight on cash, or you feel stuck. If you feel like, hey man, I am just treading water here, I don't know what the solution is. Guys, let me just say this. Hope is not a plan. Hoping that tomorrow is going to be different than it was yesterday by doing nothing different is not a plan. So yeah, some people pull back and they kind of go to that level, kind of where my dad was, right? He stayed in that, hey, I'm going to stay out here. There is one exception to the rule. Another reason that people stay there is because they think do, not who. They just can't make that mindset shift because there's so much pride and ownership. It is certainly worthy and admirable, but it is not a plan. They hang on to that because they can't let go of what they derive their value from. And so that mindset is, I've got to let go of some things to save my life. And that's really where I work with folks and coach, is because the first thing we do is we have a conversation just like a doctor. Where does it hurt most? What is it? What hat? Because you're wearing, we just identify you're wearing about 10 hats. You only have one head. So here's a neat thought. Let's get rid of a hat. Which one do you not like wearing the most? Let's get rid of that. When somebody starts looking at that and you bring them some real solutions, it's like you just gave them a shot of medicine of some sort and they go, that really felt good to not ever have to do payroll again. I hated payroll. I don't like it. I don't understand it. Don't want to do it. It goes on, and you can't see their face. They start to smile a little bit. But I want to make clear in this messy middle is that there's two ways. It's up or back if you want to save your life. You move to that next level, or you have to go back. If you stay there, let me tell you what, there's no lifeguard around you. You don't have a life jacket. You will absolutely burn out. You will burn out. So I'm glad you asked about that. So before we talk about those next two stages, any questions about that? Follow up.
Yeah. So I think one of the issues, and we've talked to a lot of people about this, the messy middle. What does profitability look like sort of in the lifestyle business versus the messy middle versus when you get out, if you're kind of brave enough, what does it look like on the other side of that?
Okay. So let's answer the account questions. It's about 2 to 5%. I would tell you that 80% that I'm talking about that are in my industry, I'll just say for practice, so we can put a number with it. Residential plumbing and air conditioning, residential service is about $120 billion industry a year in the US. Okay. 80% of the folks are doing $1.5 million or less revenue per year. 15 to 20% are doing more than $1.5 million. And I will tell you that 15 to 20% represents about 60 to 65% of that 120 billion.
Ooh.
Make sense? So
Yeah.
if I understood your question well, we don't have to be the smartest person in the room. We got to start talking to the smartest people or get them in the room. So I always say business is really easy, but it's not simple. First, we have to say, I have a problem. I'm going to start looking for some solutions. Well, I look at things pretty basic and pretty pragmatic. What are the 15 to 20% companies doing that the other 80% are?
Okay.
Let's pick the right thing first and start working on it. Just like we're in a river, we're not going to worry about getting to the end, but the end is owning a business. That's the end goal. And if we said owning a business looks like the ocean, we're on the river. Look, as your coach, let's just get to the next bend in the river. Don't worry about where you're not. Let's worry about what we've got control over. And so what that starts to look like is you first of all identify what they're really good at. And it's a question. I'd say, well, if you were working all day long, there's something that you're uniquely made for, you were built for. And if you're not sure what it is, talk to some of your friends, talk to your relationships, your family, your friends that you trust. They're going to go, you know what? Well, you're really good at this. And you're really, I noticed that you do this and it doesn't even seem like you're trying. You try to understand what that is and you say, hey, if you did that from 8 to 5, would you be as energized at the end of the day as you are at the beginning? Oh, yeah. Okay, let's find out what that is and let's never let go of that. Now let's go identify the other things
easy.
you have, the other things you have to do. But, and I know it's a family program here, but Will, what do you suck at? What do you really, what would you go, there is no way after doing it for a day, you go, I'm never doing that again.
Oh,
Okay?
and I got fired from operations.
What is that?
I got fired from operations. That's for me.
Really?
I know it's rhetorical. That's why I'm CEO. But operations, I'm not good at. Not day to,
Yeah.
definitely not day to day. Right.
And you know what? There are people with real high EQs and they get energy from people and they just like, man, everybody just feels good when they walk in the room. They got a problem. It's neutral to positive all the time. You think, gosh, this guy never has a problem in his life. He looks like he's always happy.
Sounds like Justin.
Yeah, you just described me.
Yeah, you just described Justin.
Well, you're just making my point, guys. You've realized, and what you do is you appreciate each other for what you do because you don't want to do what they do, right?
For sure.
And so what we do is we put a plan together. But here's the key thing in the messy middle. Whether it's you or somebody else, somebody's got to keep making the sales. Because sales, what's your phrase, Will?
Sales cures all ails.
Yeah. And so we can't, if it's not you, it's got to be somebody, right? And we just can't take our eye off that revenue stream. And if it is you, then it's really cool if you're the salesperson because that's what you love to do. And it is what is most valued and most seen by everybody in the company as something really positive because they know, hey, if we don't make the sales, we don't have a job or we don't have a business. So the real thing is try to get, number one, somebody to say, I have a problem. I realize that I'd rather own a business than own a job. And so the people I coach, the pain's got to be so severe that they have a burning desire to want to grow and scale their business without compromising their belief system or values. And then, man, I'm not the one that saves them. I'm just kind of coaching them. They're the ones that play it on the field, but we get them to look at things differently. I always say the problem's not the problem. The problem's the way we're looking at the problem, right? And so once we get to that point, that next phase is really cool because you move from messy middle to coaching phase, right? Because the next thing we have to do is we have to start coaching the people that can run the departments or areas. And we end up going to this coaching the coaches. Well, guess what happens when you start coaching the coaches? What I learned in my phase, and by the way, I never really got there in the first business I sold because I kind of got to that coaching the coaches phase. I never really got to owning a business because I didn't have it long enough. It was an equity company or equity buy, and they wanted me. It was a great idea to sell at that point. Don't get me wrong, but I was going for a different reason. I was going to learn about corporate. They were hiring me to do mergers and acquisitions. They were hiring me as an accountant who understood the business. And man, if you ever want to talk about what's going on in private equity and the craze of people wanting to buy service businesses, that's a whole different piece, but love to talk about that. I'm not sure there's enough time in the day, and I'm sure your listeners are all ears on that. But went on to that. So, but that next phase is coaching the coaches. That's when you realize, and I did get to that point too. Let me tell you what the coaching the coaches phase is. You can take about a 3 to 14-day vacation. Somewhere between day 3 and 14, you start to see fractures in your company, right? Because if your coaches are B players in management, that means you have to tell them and show them where the broken failures or systems or failures and breakdowns, you start seeing little fractures. So it can't run without you. And here's an important thing on the coaches thing. You know, just because you've got them in place, you can't take your eye off the leaders. Okay. You've got to be there doing the one-to-ones, talking about what the goals are, talking about their team, talking about their plan, talking about what they need from you for them to be successful. It's work, but it's a different kind of work. But you know you're in the coaches phase because between day 3 and 14, you can really go take a vacation. Well, let me tell you what, being able to go take a week or 2-week vacation for a business owner or somebody who owns a small business, you have really done something special. If that business is still there when you get back, you need some kind of trophy for getting to that level. The next one is when you start growing and scaling your business to where you truly own a business. You don't own a job. You're not coaching the coaches. You're thinking about strategy. What's this AI thing? What should we be doing 3, 5, and 8 years from now? Should we buy a building? Should I diversify my income? We're making more money than I really need to live on. We need to diversify our business, reinvest. What are some of the charities you want to get involved in? Now we can build a legacy. And we can talk about that, but I think I wanted to give you at least what the path out of the messy middle looks like. I just want to make sure really everybody clears. When you're in that messy middle, it's up or out or back. I say out. It's back. It is not stay there. It's not sustainable.
So for people that do stay there, what actually happens?
What's
the domino effect?
You ever heard Zig Ziglar talk about those fruit flies thing?
Man, it's been a long time. You're gonna have to remind me.
You remember? Well, he talks about a jar of fruit flies, and I can't remember how long, but if they stay in there a certain period of time, and it's not long, I think it's like 3 or 4 days, maybe it's a week. Fruit flies are buzzing around in there, right? You take the top off, guess what happens?
Wow. Wait,
Man.
not after 3, 4 days. They sort of hit the ceiling, but they go back down with this. They ignore the top.
It's like there's an invisible wall there they can't get out of. It's crazy. That's what it looks like. And so what happens is they run out of cash. I mean, the reason people go out of business, it's 3 or 4 or 5 things. And don't take my word for it. You can go to Chat or Gemini and they're going to choke this out real quick. But the top 4 reasons are they run out of cash. They had no real clear plan. They didn't have sales marketing strategy, and some just, lack of technical experience. Somebody goes and starts a business, but doesn't know how to do the actual technical part of the job. All of us have to start in our solopreneur to be a technician. That's why I told my dad, hey, I'm picking this. It wasn't really that I've grown to love plumbing and air conditioning, but I think it could have been any business, right?
Yeah, I think that's the very interesting, right? That solo entrepreneur, solopreneur, right? Usually they are already trained. Right? I'm working for somebody else doing this job. I think I can do it better. I go off on my own, start my own business. Now I have the technical skill set, but a lot of times you don't have the business acumen, right? That's just generally the lack. So when you have, I don't want to say accidental success, but when you have success that, I've grown to 3 trucks or whatever the situation is, and now you hit that wherever that middle kind of starts, then you're like, oh crap, like I am the largest constraint to my business without question, because I am the bottleneck for these 10 or 11 seats at which I sit in or hats I'm wearing, right? So you got that going on, and then you have to either evolve, right, to get past that, or you fall backwards. So what did it look like for you? Like, what did, when we think about, businesses and struggles and, obviously we all want to succeed and like all that's the beautiful dream of it. But like the reality is hard times come. What did your hard time look like? What did the lights out conversation that you write in the book? Talk about that.
Got it. So I understand, as I've shared with you, this first business, I built it, didn't get it to that final stage of building a legacy because somebody wanted to buy it. And I went ahead and, willing buyer and seller. And I went off and did mergers and acquisitions. I had already done this. I started another business after I got my corporate experience. I worked for ServiceMaster, and it was ARS Rescue Rooter. I was on their executive team. It was really a good ride. I learned a lot, but I was with them about almost 2 years. I got hired away by a headhunter to be a CEO of a real estate management company. It was a regional real estate management company in Memphis, Tennessee. That's where ServiceMaster's home office was. And I'd never been contacted by a headhunter. And I ran that business, but my kids were getting to a point where they were about ready to start school. My wife Jenny of 27 years is a sixth generation Texan. Roads were going to lead back home to her family. So we come back, we start another business, but I also was doing some coaching, keynote speaking, and coaching coaches, kind of like what I do now. But I was running, I started a plumbing business and a coaching workshop business, and both were doing well, I thought, and were doing really well. Probably a little more focused on the coaching business for me. And so we quickly moved through those phases. I hired a team. I said, this is no problem. I've done this before. I'm going to work Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday out on the road, sharing all my thoughts about how to run a business. I've done this. I'm 35, 36 at this point. And I'm out probably speaking 120 days a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fun.
Wow.
But I want to make a point before I tell you what happened to me. We all have values and we have thoughts and we have beliefs and we have our construct about how we want to live our life. Being successful in business isn't just for your ego. We do this so that our families can have a better life. And there's a trapping to that if our values get a little out of sync, you can probably hear where this is headed. I was a little full of myself. I had a little bit of pride in what I was doing. And so I wasn't following the same basic principles of running a business. I left that to a team of people and was throwing money at it, thinking that's the way to do that. We were in our messy middle, but we were just going to go through that phase and keep going and no problem. I mean, that's just another phase. We get to the next wall. I come home off the road. It's a Friday afternoon. I'm loving life and looking through the papers and just kind of seeing how things were going. And the lights go off in the office. And in Texas, we have brownouts and blackouts. And I'm going, okay, well, we have a power outage. It's middle of summer. I go next door, talk to my neighbor business next door, and their lights are just fine. Go to the other side, no problem. So I'll fast forward you. We had financial problems that I had taken my eye off of and convinced myself that, oh, it's this, it's that, making excuses for, well, it's a sales problem. We'll push through that kind of thing. And the accountant didn't look at one of the most important things. Guys, we didn't pay our electric bill. I come back and I find out, we get the lights turned back on, give them a credit card. I come back and I find out that we're about 4 to 6 months behind in some key relationships. I take a stack home about this high on Friday night, which ends up being 2 a.m. on Saturday. And I'm slumped in my chair going, we're bankrupt. I mean, the accountant in me knows when we're toast. I don't have to tell you about this. I lived it. And the desperation that I felt was incredible. But I'm going to tell you, at the core of it was pride. Pride. I thought I was smarter and I've done this before. I took my eye off of the two most important things that I've never taken my eye off since. It was the best lesson I ever learned in my life on a couple different fronts. But let's just stick with the business one. You can never delegate the financials of your business. You might delegate the work, but you own the financials. They are your financials. And they're there to tell you, they're there to save your life if you'll pay attention to them. Number 2 is you are the one who sets the culture for your company. You define how you go to market, how you're going to act, how you're going to behave. We have a culture statement in my business now. Serious Plumbing and Air Conditioning is quickly getting to be about 27 years old. Jenny and I own it outright. We have a laminated sheet that has our culture on one side and our service call process on the other. Every interview I have, I cover that with anybody who joins the company. I own the business. I don't run it anymore. I'll coach a couple of key people in the business, but I still have an interview with everybody who comes into the business because they need to hear from me what the culture is. And so you can't delegate that. You can't delegate the financials. And that's what I learned from that. But here's the other thing. I told you something was tugging at me. My kids were 4 and 6 at the time, and I was really having a problem with being a suitcase dad. I have no judgment about people that work so hard and travel. They're road warriors. That's how they provide for their families. I don't mean to say that but for me, I had some choices, and I knew that I wasn't choosing the right things. What happened in the business? We got it turned around. I talk about it in my book, but I want to make this statement to everybody who's listening. We're all going to have problems. And if you're going to have a business, we're going to have problems. And I promise you, we're going to confront some kind of adversity this year in our businesses. I say that because I want your listeners to understand I have been inches from bankruptcy and I've had really, really solid financial success, but none of it's worth compromising your values and your family at the expense of being successful or what you define as success. That business almost going bankrupt. I said you have to go either, up or back. Okay. I've lived that. I want your listeners to understand that that business going almost bankrupt saved my life. It's the best. I would say what my dad taught me in sales and that one lesson. And so what I really want to say is we're all going to have problems. We're all going to have adversity, but it's out of our mistakes and our failures that we learn the most. And I would just offer that back to you. I'm sure you have your own stories about that, but don't be afraid of a problem. Don't fear, having an issue in your business where you have to go backwards to fix it. You know what the real thing to fear is? Pride. Pride's the thing to fear. And I'm not sure if there's a scripture or not, but I think it's pride comes before fall. Okay. That was my problem. And just to go back to your question about what happens in that messy middle, it's the same thing as if somebody's out in the wilderness, they don't lose their life because they didn't have the intellect or the resources or do something. It was pride. It's just saying, hey, look, this is where I am. Here's my problem. Don't pretend or believe that it doesn't exist. Just deal with what you have control over and move forward. But the first thing you have to say is, I got a problem. And boy, did I have a problem. I was $1 million in debt. I had a million problems. But the biggest problem I needed to fix first was getting my priorities straight. Bags went on the floor. I didn't do another speaking engagement. I shut down that business. I took care of that business. It was a family style business, or it was a lifestyle business. We kept it at a certain level so that we could do that with our kids. They're 26, 29 now. And so I feel like I started rambling, Justin, but I really wanted to share that if you think, oh my gosh, for Brent, it's just been, cherry pie and ice cream. Don't put me on that pedestal, because I'm just on the other side of that wall is another operating business. And I guarantee you, right now we have 3 problems we're trying to solve, and we're going to have problems. We're all going to have problems. We all have those in common. So, but pride is the issue for me. And, making those decisions to get life priorities straight first, then you can scale and grow your business without compromising your values.
Yeah.
So
Ego is the enemy, as they say, right?
you guys have your own quips and quotes, don't you?
We
Ales and the ego, for sure. Yeah,
we've done this many, many times. So we've certainly heard lots of different quips across 5 years of interviewing leaders, and I think that it's a thing that you can forget. I've told the story before. I was going through Ryan Holiday's books. One is Ego is the Enemy. Other one is Stillness is the Key, and Discipline is Destiny. And I was going through and I read one of the discipline first, and then I was like, well, which one should I read next? And I was like, well, not Ego is Enemy, because I don't need to read that one. Like, which is hilarious because that's ego. Like, that is inherently the problem, that when you take your eye off the ball, that's what occurs. And to your point as well, is like, no matter when, you have to keep putting in the work. Like the work
Well,
that doesn't end until, again, like your work now is coaching those to do the operational stuff. But like, if you stop doing that coaching, you will get in that spin. You will be in the spin cycle because you've taken your eye off the ball.
yeah. I believe this to my core. I choose who I work with, because I coach a very small group. Okay. Because it's not, I said to myself when I got off the road, I said, if I go back and do this again, I'm doing it for a different reason. And one of the most important reasons is to help people get through that messy middle. Right. And I will tell you, one of the common themes that I see, or common traits I see in people who get there, they're readers. Leaders are readers, because I believe reading changes your perspective. I didn't say it, but I've heard it and I believe it. You'll be changed every 5 years by the books you read and the people you meet. Your relationships and your book reading is one of the things that keeps you growing and thinking and looking at things differently. And so you brought up books. I think that's what allows us to consider, or what I would say, suspend our belief system long enough to consider something new. Yeah. Good stuff.
Yeah.
That's where growth happens. That's where growth happens.
Yeah.
So we talked a whole bunch about kind of the people side and the process side of kind of things that happen. What about if you could kind of be brief around the technologies, as brief as you can be, around the technologies that are needed in the different phases, right? Where to invest in technology, in the different phases.
Yeah. So your question is, at this moment in time, what technology are you using or considering into the future? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So another good book is Good to Great and Built to Last. They talk about technology being the last thing you consider, because what you really need to do is have your systems and processes, because it's extremely expensive to put that on the front end. But the technology is never going to fix a culture issue. Technology is never going to fix a business problem that requires a team working together. It will streamline. It'll make it better, faster, cheaper. It will take mundane tasks and make it faster. So the first question about technology is, what problem are we trying to solve? Okay. And I'm going to give you a real life example of what we're in this week to answer your question. I'll make it as brief as possible. We've been considering looking at handling phone calls with bots, and what level and how do we do that and whatever. And I said, time out. What problem are we solving? The truth of the matter is, what we really needed was to invest in how we're doing our texting with our clients, which is a fifth of the cost and solves 3 more problems than be able to handle the phone. Man, when somebody wants to talk to you on the phone, it's not something typically you want to handle with a machine. You think about it. When somebody, I just want to talk to somebody. Well, that's true. If we want to schedule something, because we know, even me at 61, I'd prefer to text than talk on a phone for a task, right? Hey, you want to meet tonight? Yep. Okay, I'll see you at 5. Great. You don't want to have that phone call anymore. You're just moving information and meeting somewhere, right? Hey, I got a real problem with what you did last week and I need to talk to you. Well, let's text it out. That's not going to happen, right? So in the context of our business, we boiled it down and we said, What we really need is to handle the mundane tasks. These are the problems to free up our time to spend more time with customers. So I think any technology that we're using it to solve a specific problem, or we're not doing it. And all along. So I'm trying to be as brief as possible, but what we're doing right now is we are leaning in. I would say our three main technologies are our back office software. We use a company called Field Pulse. Love them. I think they do a great job in that lane. I call them Surface Titan Light.
All right.
They pack a bigger punch than their price, and man, are they much more positioned for a midline company than the heavy stuff that comes with Service Titan. No offense, but if you're not over 50 million in total revenue, Service Titan, you're not going to use their capability. I mean, it is a deep product and a great product, but hey, it's built for larger companies. So back office software, Field Pulse, QuickBooks, and Google Workspace. And what we want to do is keep it all in there. So as far as what we're using right now, we're using Claude, we're certainly using Codex. We're certainly looking at ways to use Claude to streamline our systems. We're trying to get off all the spreadsheets. We want to confine what we're doing and streamline our processes. But at the top of any technology decision is, tell me what problem we're solving before we spend a dime. That wasn't brief, Will, but I tried, I promise.
That was pretty brief. No, I appreciate it. No, we condensed a pretty big topic down to pretty brief. I would say that's pretty brief. What do you think, Justin?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think you gave us your full
if I had, sorry, Justin, I didn't mean to step on you. If I had not talked about the real life thing that actually happened the last 2 weeks, it probably would have been briefer. So more brief.
Real life experiences are what it's all about. So I appreciate the insight. Justin, what do you think? Think it's time?
Yeah, we're probably at time for our last question, which we love to ask all of our guests, which we know you've done your homework because you're an avid Building Scale listener. Right. So if you could go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself?
Yeah, Justin, it's a great question. And you mentioned that we're kind enough to look at the book that I wrote, 30 Days to a Better Business. It is a book, Leaders or Readers. It is a book written for skilled trades. It's the skilled trades edition, and it's broken down into 5 weeks. And so the first week is sales, second week leadership, third week is business planning, and then fourth is accounting. And others, what do great companies have in common? It is written for people who don't read a lot, and it's an easy read, but it's a narrative between Carl, this older sage who owns a business, meets Evan at the Ferguson supply counter, and they develop this relationship. So those first 3 weeks, they talk back and forth. And I gave my book to my friends and people and said, hey, give me some comments and what do you think? And that's always a tough experience because it's like painting and turning it around and going, what do you think? But if you listen, they go, a couple of the common questions were, hey, Brent, are you Carl or are you Evan? And I said, well, I'm both. Evan's my 20-year-old self and Carl is my older self. So that's my answer in the skilled trades bag. So, and it's, shameless plug for the book, but I'm just saying, I think you'll like it. And in that whole first 3 weeks before I had ever watched your podcast or talked to you guys, that was the purpose. It's a mentor mentee kind of relationship. But for me personally, what would I say to my younger self? Guys, I didn't have much. If I didn't play college sports, I was a quarterback and played golf in college. If I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't have gotten through college. I told you we came from a humble background. So I spent the first third of my life scared to death that I wasn't going to make it. And that's what drove me. What I would say to my younger self is cut yourself some slack. You work hard. Control the things that you have control over. Don't worry about the future. Worry about right now what you need to do. Don't take a job for money. Take it for what you can learn because you will learn from your failures and you're going to be just fine. I wish I had that voice a little more in my head, and it's emotional for me to even talk about because I really didn't think I would make it. And if there's one thing I can say to your listeners, don't get stuck in that messy middle, because there's a way out of that. But you got to tuck your pride. You got to look at things differently, because on the other side, I can tell you for a fact now, I know there's nothing like owning a business and watching it run, and it's not dependent on you. Here's what starts to happen. You had a dream to grow a business and you got it to a certain level that now what you find, the people you coach or the people that you coached, they are now building their own dreams inside your business. They're buying homes. They're raising families. They have a better life. Your motivation shouldn't be just to tuck some more money in your pocket to build a legend, or I'm sorry, to build a legacy. It should be to have a big enough dream and vision where other people can accomplish and fulfill and live their dreams within your organization. That's when it gets really, really fun. And so I'll say that's kind of my word back to you about, I probably have more to say to my younger self about some choices I made, but that's for a different conversation.
For sure. No, that's good advice. Not being so hard on yourself effectively. I love that. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that, Brent?
Yeah, you can go to theskilledtradescoach.com. I work with a community of skilled trades business owners that have a burning desire to grow and scale their business without compromising their values. And it's real simple. Don't cost you a dime. All over the website, you can connect with me. I offer up about 30, 40-minute conversation, just like we've had. Might be a little more specific, but about your business, what your pain points are and what stage you're in the business. And, you know, you may never talk to me again, but I'm going to give you 2 or 3 things that, based on what you said, I think you probably ought to look at. We also have 3-day retreats where you come and learn sales, leadership, business planning. And I give you a planning tool that you can go off and DIY it and run your business the same way. I also have a big back end where people go from that conversation to talking to me every week with a mastermind class with other like-minded people that have a community, and we're working through your problems and we're just trying to get to that next bend in the river. So we meet as a group and I meet with you one-to-one 2 or 3 times a month.
Okay.
That's the way to find me. That's what I do. Man, it's been a blast being with you guys. You run a great podcast.
Appreciate
it. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Well, listeners,
Justin, if you do talk to me and you do that 30, 40 minutes, I'll send you a free ebook of 30 Days to a Better Business.
Well, that's awesome. The little extra value there. So I love that.
Yeah.
Listeners, I hope you had just as good of a time as we did. Brent, you've been wonderful. And until next time, adios.
Adios.
Bye, guys.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
keep building scale.
Scale.